You know, guys, as early as I can remember, I have the memories of my grandmother's house and her fish tank, her aquarium, the breathing of the filters, the cascading water. It's forever implanted up here. And, you know, we're talking about keeping fish this morning. East Shore Coral is where we are. Steve Domelick. And as I talked about a couple of seconds ago, really keeping a fish or an aquarium of some sort is a lot more than just a goldfish or a fighting fish on your desk, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, multiple benefits, stress relief, artistic expression.
All kinds of reasons.
All kinds of reasons.
Let's talk about what we've got here. I mean, it really is, you mentioned the artistic expression. You're talking about kind of building an environment for living creatures, and you actually can build it, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
What kind of thing is going on in here?
Well, this is mainly our giant soft coral tank.
Okay.
So soft corals compared to stony, way easier to keep. You know, you don't have to dose as much. Calcium, alkalinity, all that kind of stuff.
That's all chemical references.
Chemical references,
okay,
yep.
sure. And this is a saltwater tank, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Absolutely, yep.
So you can choose a saltwater, freshwater if you wanted to.
Yep, even brackish water, which is like a 50-50 mix.
Okay.
And they've got interesting little fish like mud skippers that literally come out of the water, run across a log and eat crickets. All kinds of crazy stuff.
Why do you think people like to collect and build habitats for fish, you know, at home?
It kind of gives you a feeling of, you know, like having your own little world you've created in your house, and you know, you're in charge of everything, the fish's health, coral, you know, how everything's going to look. So from setting the tank up till you have coral growing like this, it's a real sense of accomplishment, and you know, just pretty awesome.
It's fun to watch, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Are there certain fish that can't live? I mean, obviously there's all kinds of different kinds of fish in here. Are there certain ones that just don't get along, they just don't play nice?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. In fact, this is mainly, you know, aside from the few algae-eating tanks we have in here, you've got a lot of fish that get really big, like this Panther Grouper gets over 2 feet.
Which one? The one right here?
It's the spotted one right here.
2 feet?
Yeah, 2 feet long, and they will eat up every little fish you have in the tank if you're not careful. So you definitely have to watch what you put in there. But in larger tanks like this is a 250. I mean, you can have crazy stuff like that. We got a moray eel hiding in here somewhere.
Yeah, I saw the eel. He's down here somewhere. He might come out. You never know.
Yeah.
He might come out. Now, is it true that fish will only get as big as their environment? So if you keep him in a tank like this, will he get any bigger? Or will he eventually outgrow this 250
Yeah, that's a common misconception. Yeah, they grow way bigger than their environment. They will grow slower in a smaller tank, but they will definitely grow to their full size no matter what.
Steve Domelick, from East Shore Coral here this morning. We're learning about keeping fish, the environment. We're going to talk about how you build one if you want to think about putting a tank in, considerations for that. Also, a little fun fact for you, the coral, it's not just rock, guys. It actually is living and breathing. Well, I guess it's not breathing, it's underwater, but it's living. It's an organism. We're going to teach you about that as well as we learn all things fish. Seems like a little fishy to me. You know I was going to do it. You knew it. We're at East Shore Coral in West Columbia, guys. Stay with us. Well, you know what, guys? Actually having fish and sustaining an ecosystem under the water, albeit maybe just that much water, certainly is some work, and applying a little science to it as well, and maybe a little artistic ability. But when you're building an aquarium to start with, a lot of times we're familiar with these items, right? Coral. Well, as luck would have it, this actually is not coral. These are the skeletons of coral, because as it turns out, coral is actually living and breathing, well, I guess living and drinking organism, right? That's right. Steve from East Shore Coral here in West Columbia. Now, what do you mean this stuff's alive? Because I think it's just rocks. It's just what it looks like.
Yep. Basically, it is living tissue on top of a calcium carbonate skeleton.
Okay.
Which has a symbiotic dinoflagellate that lives in it called zooanthele, or zooanthela, depending on how you pronounce it.
Okay.
And it's basically its own self-contained ecosystem that's living inside the tank, yes.
So inside this little guy, 'cause this is rock. I mean, in here.
Yep, it's pretty much just a bunch of calcium, pretty much like cement. And so on top of that, you have living tissue, like this right here. And those colors come from the zooanthela that lives in it, which actually photosynthesizes and feeds the coral. So the coral
it begins to grow, right?
It begins to grow and then crusts over, and then through the water it absorbs more of that calcium and bicarbonate, and then builds that skeleton, and it just keeps compounding until it's a massive piece like that right there. All different colors.
Now, when you're talking about an ecosystem, and you got to talk sustainability, it's one of the buzzwords and a very important word with the zoo. We talk about, you know, continuing the circle of life, as I like to call it anyway. But when you're removing some of the stuff from the ocean, eventually it's a finite amount, which means you got to start creating a way to make more for folks like you and I who get into doing fish, right?
Right.
And so that comes with just creating these little things here. Is this what this is all about?
Coral frags or fragments. Yeah, basically you take big colonies that are aquacultured, which is where they take stuff from the wild, small pieces, put it into basically lagoons that are fed with water from the ocean.
Okay.
And grow it out, and then they ship it to the U.S. and then people like us will frag it up into smaller pieces, peel it, grow it over about a month's time, and then put it up for sale.
And then let it grow and actually so become sustainable in and of itself.
Exactly.
As opposed to continually stealing from the ocean.
Right. Yeah. So that way you're not constantly pulling off of reefs, which are continually disappearing.
Right.
And eventually will be no more.
How long does it take this process to go from this little guy right here to that great big piece over there? I mean, what kind of timeline is that? Is that like a tree
that big? You're looking at years.
Okay.
Some of this stuff grows really fast, where you could get a small little piece and grow it into something like that in a matter of, say, 2 to 3 years, compared to something like that, which is a lot slower growing, which probably took 20 years to get that big.
Good gracious! Actually, so when you're thinking about setting up a fish tank, you're feeding two life forms. You got your fish, but then you also have the wildlife or the fish life that's the plant life, whatever that's in here as well. The invertebrate. He's using the official fishing term, invertebrate. I get it. So guys, we're going to hang out here all morning long at East Shore Coral with Steve, and coming up in just a little bit, we're going to show you kind of the basics, and if you want to start setting up your own ecosystem, it's a great thing to do with a family. It's a great way to teach kids responsibility, and it's not quite as hard as letting the dog out at 3 in the morning when they're scratching at the door, right?
That's right. That's right.
Stay with us. We're coming back live from West Columbia, East Shore Coral, right here on Sunset Boulevard. Stay with us. Well, guys, this morning we're talking about aquatics and aquascaping and creating your very own ecosystem, a kind of a world within a world inside your house. It's very cool. The therapeutic properties of a fish tank, just having a chance to see the fish, see what they do, the responsibility you can teach your family, of course. You have to be responsible for living, breathing, like drinking, I suppose. I guess they do breathe, right? Fish actually breathe.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a little tiny bit of air particles, not water.
Yep, air dissolved into the water.
Awesome. Yep. From East Shore Coral, Steve Domlich. So, all right, so we've learned about the fish. We've learned about the fact that coral is not just rock, like I would think it's rock. It's actually not. It's living organisms. So we started out, we filled up our tank. This is a saltwater tank, right? Mm-hmm. So we've got a little bit in here. We've got some sand down there. How do we go about building this? What do we want to do?
Well, basically, we start off with the live sand that introduces live bacteria into the tank, which helps with the cycling process, basically setting up live bacteria that processes ammonia, nitrite, converts that into nitrate, and then kind of like the full circle, hence the cycle name.
Circle of life, sure.
Yep, and then the live rock is the next important thing to put in there.
Well, let's go ahead and stick some of that in and see how this actually plays in. So this is actual live stuff. This is alive?
Yeah, this is live rock covered in live bacteria. It's got some coralline algae on it. That'll be the kind of purple stuff like you see growing on the back of the tank in spots.
Right. Okay.
And as the tank matures and grows, that purple's going to spread all over everything.
So is there any science to where you're putting stuff, or can you really just kind of get creative?
You can just get creative. Now, you want to build some kind of caves and little nooks and crannies for depending on what kind of fish you're going to put in there. And it's always important to research.
That's for enrichment for the fish, so they can explore and they can keep their minds, their little itty-bitty minds sharp.
Exactly. Like this one here has a bunch of that nice coralline algae, this purple stuff on it. Wow. And they even make a synthetic rock that has that purple covering, and it still has the live bacteria that they ship dry, well, moist and dry.
Okay.
But yeah, the live stuff, always the best way to go. Very important to make sure it's cured, meaning that when it comes out of wherever it's grown or aquacultured, that all the organisms and shipping that die don't die and rot in the tank when you go to put fish in.
Okay.
You want them to actually have all that done before introducing it.
Let's make it up. All right, what's in this bucket over here, guys?
We got some live corals that we're going to throw in here just for a little bit of bling, a little bit of color.
A little bling up your fish tank.
That's right.
That's a new TV show for you, Steve. Bling my tank.
That's right. So right here we got a little fungia or plate coral. And these guys just sit in the bottom. They're really kind of cool because they can move around at night. We got some little soft coral here, some little mushrooms.
Look at that right there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And these guys will actually fluoresce under the actinic lights, the blue lights, from that zoanther we were talking about earlier, and which basically acts as a sunscreen to protect them from the ultraviolet rays.
Now, when folks come in and see somebody like you at East Shore Coral, wherever you want to go, obviously you know what you're doing. So if I come in and I'm an absolute novice, I'm an idiot, and say, man, I want to get into aquatics. You're going to help me go ahead and build all this stuff and all the concern and things like that.
Start to finish, cycling the tank, explain everything to you. We don't literally leave any stone unturned when it comes to helping people set tanks up.
All the science that goes into aquatics is more than just buying yourself a little Chinese fighting fish and sticking it on your desk, as it turns out. So we're building our tank here. When we come back in just a little bit here from East Shore, we're going to talk about the fish selection and put them in and kind of build this little world with you this morning, live in West Columbia. Oh, I like that. You're better than Greg Brady. Yeah. That's great.
All right, little mushroom, where are you trying to go off to?
So we were live this morning in West Columbia, just off Sunset Boulevard at East Shore Coral, talking, of course, about aquatics. That is, having an aquarium in your house or in your office, like every doctor's office on the planet certainly has one as well.
Absolutely.
Steve, Dominic, you are the mastermind behind this business. You've been in this business, or at least been interested in fishing and that kind of thing since you were 5, you said?
Since I was 5, yeah. So 33 years I've been doing this.
Gracious. So it's a hobby turned into a business for you, for
Absolutely,
sure.
a passion for sure.
Sure.
Yep.
So we've learned this morning some saltwater things. We learned that coral actually is living and breathing. An organism is not just a hunk of rock, a piece of rock. We've kind of learned how to aquascape and build an environment for the fish.
Yep.
So what happens then is we got to stock it.
Exactly.
Right, in a good pond.
Yep.
What kind of considerations, and what do you got going over here? Let's look at some of these. And what I love is I love the colors of every one of these fish. You got an orange back here. You've got the blue and the green. It's gorgeous to look at. But what are considerations?
Considerations are they going to get too large for the tank? That's a huge one.
Now, you said before, that's a myth, because I always thought fish only get as big as their environment. That is not the truth.
It's right. They grow slower in a smaller environment, but they do not stop growing.
So if I took a big old bass from Lake Murray and tossed it in here, eventually that sucker would be a lot bigger.
That's right, yep.
Okay.
Tail on one end, head on the other. Absolutely.
Fair enough.
Cracking the glass. Yep. So you want to make sure, fish are colorful, you like them. You're going to make sure they coexist together. And it's also good to make sure they have a function in the tank, like a lot of the tanks we have in here, like the sailfin and the blonde naso that is on camera right now.
Okay, this guy right here?
Yep. Okay. Those are wonderful algae eaters, very colorful,
so
interesting
they've kind of
fish.
each got a job, which is better than Bailey and Chloe, my dogs, because they got no job at all.
That's right. So yeah, they go around and pick algae, keep all the rocks clean.
Right.
Wrasses are great for picking parasites off of coral.
Okay, and that's this guy right here?
Yep.
Okay.
Fireworms, bristleworms and stuff that go around the bottom. Some of those that eat, clams and coral. Those guys will actually cruise around, look for them, and pick them off.
Sure.
And then really just, you want colorful, interesting things
But
to
not
entertain.
all fish get along, though, right? And that's the important thing. That's why you got to turn to an expert like East Shore, wherever you go to get your fish. It may not be probably a big box store with the word Mart at the end of it, because they may not know fish can interact, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. One thing I want to point out, too, and your partner Phil pointed this out, we talked about coral being kind of living and breathing. If you look over here, guys, this is really, really neat. These things are actually breathing, I guess, for what it is, but they're taking in nutrients out of the water, and the coral, the plant is actually breathing. It's not just the current underneath the water there. I think that's a fascinating way to see that as well.
It's excellent. Yeah, it's the only coral that actually moves like that. That pulse, called pulsing xenia.
That's very cool.
Very cool.
How many fish? This is 250 gallons. How many is too many? I mean, can you get overstocked? So you get to just bump into each other?
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Yeah, your nitrates can go through the roof, and the coral are very sensitive to those nitrates. Sure. So with that, you'd have to do increased water changes. But basically, that's where you want to research the fish before you put them in there.
Right.
And then you can always come up and ask us about stuff like that. So it really depends on how big the fish is going to grow, and then you can kind of gauge how many you're going to put in there.
Fantastic stuff. We're talking with Steve here at East Shore Coral, just on the Highway 378, Sunset Boulevard, if you will, in West Columbia, learning about this cool thing, responsibility for the kids, and just a really fun, very relaxing hobby. We're going to wrap it up here in about 20 minutes or so, live from West Columbia. Stay with us. We're going fishing. Well, guys, we've been live and local all morning long here at East Shore Coral on 378, Sunset Boulevard in West Columbia, learning about the art, and I do say art, of aquatics. Oh yeah. Building a little biosphere, your own little science project with living organisms, not just the fish, by the way. The corals are alive as well. Of course, it's not necessarily maybe the cheapest hobby on the planet, but you had actually brought up something a couple of minutes ago. Steve here from East Coral, by the way. One of the reasons why maybe you want to come to an expert, that you actually focus in this kind of business, not just heading down and talking to a teenager at a local fish store, big box store, right? Yeah, big box stores. You don't often get the education. It's just kind of, just pretty much somebody that works in the cat food department gets thrown over in the fish department, and then they're selling you fish, and they don't know what goes with what. And next thing you know, you got fish eating each other, tearing up the tank, eating all your coral. Sure. It's definitely very important to deal with somebody who's been doing it a while, knows what goes with what, and what can coexist with your invertebrates and coral. Absolutely. What are the benefits of getting into aquatics, having a fish tank? Again, more than just having a betta fish on your desk. I mean, actually creating an environment for these guys. Absolutely. Stress relief, proven to lower blood pressure. Right. And also just something fun to do. Keep your mind entertained, Right. If you're lonely, bored, or just like pretty things. It's funny, I've actually been mesmerized. These guys right here, all morning long I sit, it almost seems foolish. I feel like the foolish fish I'm watching is they just watch them swim about and do their thing. Who knows what they're in there thinking and doing. These guys are protecting the little, you can see the little itty bitty babies in there too. But that's what they're doing. That's why they're so schizophrenic, I would say, today, for sure. But it's also another neat way, Steve, for families to teach them responsibility without having to worry about barking dogs.
Absolutely. And to teach the cycle of life. I mean, you can see them when they lay eggs, to hatching, and then the parents taking care of their babies, and then to when it gets to the point when the babies have to go out on their own.
Sure.
So it also teaches important life lessons, and it's just really fascinating to watch.
Can you get into, I said sport, I guess get into the hobby? You know, some of the stuff you showed us is rather expensive. It gets pricey. You certainly, like any hobby, you can spend as much as you want, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
But can you find places, used places, Craigslist, eBay, somewhere where you can get kind of into it, at least on a base level, fairly inexpensively?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Craigslist all the time. They have wonderful deals on I mean, you know, huge tanks, small tanks, you name it, for sometimes just, you know, very little money. Like a third of the price you buy everything new, or sometimes less than that. Sometimes people are just giving stuff away.
Right.
So,
just to get out of there, because you put a 250-gallon tank in your house. Seems like a good idea. You change your mind after the kids get out.
That's right.
You want the space,
Absolutely.
right?
Or if you're in the military and you get relocated, then what do you do with
Great
the tank?
point.
And so around here, you get a lot of that. So yeah, anybody can get into it. Any income level, it's a doable thing.
Steve Donlick here from East Shore Coral, Highway 378, Sunset Boulevard, right in Lexington. Stop by if you have any questions. He'll be happy to help you out. We're going to put links for you at watch.com/Tyler's Travels over to the store. You can email him, ask him some questions. Whoever your fish guy may be, certainly he can step in and help that role and give you some expertise. You're 30-some-odd years in the business, for sure.
That's right.
Well, thank you for the tour and the insight. Learned a lot of stuff. I didn't even have any clue that coral is more than just, this actually is the skeleton. That's the takeaway for me, I think, today.
Yeah.
Guys, stay with us. We are live and local on Good Day Columbia until 9 a.m.